Hello, welcome to Living Arts. I'm your host, Jackie Suarez. I want to thank you for tuning in. Today we are live at the Hudson Valley Center for Contemporary Art. We are here with icon Cey Adams, visual artist, author, designer. How are you?
I'm great. Wow, that was a huge introduction.
I can go on all day. You deserve it. You totally deserve it. For some of our audience, I want to just give them a little background on how you came up. I mean, I know that you started as a graffiti artist, so why don't you take it from there?
Yeah, I started out as a graffiti artist when I was a teenager, and the idea back then was really just to try to figure out a way to take my creativity and do something positive with it. That and to keep my parents off my back. So that was the goal. It was pretty simple. But shortly thereafter, I was fortunate enough to meet Russell Simmons and Rick Rubin when they were forming Def Jam, and they gave me an opportunity to learn how to design album covers. And I spent most of my adult life designing album covers for some of the biggest names in hip-hop.
No, definitely. That opportunity right there, just being able to design how someone was going to represent themselves in the industry or their logo must have been really crazy to do at the time.
Yeah, it was. Granted, I was very young and so were the artists, so a lot of it was trial and error, but we sort of figured it out. And one of the things that was really great for me was having an opportunity to work with somebody like Chuck D and the guys from Public Enemy, because Chuck understood the power of a logo even back then. And that was one of the things that we had in common because we were both visual artists. And so being able to work with an image like that when we were doing Fear of a Black Planet, for example, you know, it's funny to sort of look at where we are, the state of America now, and think about us doing that, 20, 25 years ago. Seems like a long time, but we were clearly, on to, something very important.
No, absolutely. I mean, do you think, if you look at, I guess, rock and roll and some of the images that they had as well, like, people can identify, like, the Rolling Stones very easily by that image.
Right.
But, want to point out to our audience that you didn't have the internet or so many images online to draw from to design something. You were really doing it with very simple, rudimentary things.
Yeah, we had to do everything by hand, and this is, pre-computer. Everything was just sitting down at your drawing table and just creating a visual out of thin air and having to execute it with, like these same tools that I'm using today. And that's what it was all about. It was just, using your imagination. But it's the same thing that the artist had to tap into to make the music. So in a lot of ways, we really understood each other.
So, you were so, I guess, popular, or became so popular at that time. So many different artists were seeking you out to kind of be their design artist or to design something for them.
Well, I was fortunate. Working at Def Jam gave me a platform and a vehicle to work with a bunch of different folks. And I credit a lot of that to the power of the label, but also the power of the artwork. And I also had a huge team of visual artists that were working with me that were really talented, whether they were graphic designers or photographers or illustrators. It was a real creative community. And to me, I sort of think of it like the early days of Motown. It was like a finishing school at Def Jam. They taught you how to talk to the press. They taught you how to do interviews, how to deal with photographers, hair and makeup, styling, all of these things. And all I could think about is this idea that we were all sort of thrown into this situation and we had to figure out how we were going to realize our dreams.
Right, and so many people's dreams are realized, just can you imagine just the how far Russell Simmons has come through through all of that. And how far you have come as well.
Yeah.
Because you had a partner you were working with at the time, Steve Carr.
Yeah, my buddy Steve Carr, who now is a big-time Hollywood film director. But we started out very simple. He was a visual artist and an illustrator, and I was a graffiti artist and then later a graphic designer. And so we had that sort of creative shorthand that we built from, and that gave us the foundation to build our company right alongside Def Jam. And we worked with the best artists in the business, everybody from Run DMC to Jay-Z.
Right, and you translated that into working with other people, like Nike and some other commercial. Name some other people that you were working with.
Wow, I've worked with HBO, Nike, Adidas, Burton Snowboards. Howard Schultz and Starbucks, Magic Johnson Enterprises. I've been very, very fortunate. I've had a really blessed career.
No, absolutely. And then, the evolution from the graffiti artist to the graphic designer to the visual artist, because you've worked. I mean, you've done like murals with the Smithsonian. Why don't you tell me about that? That was a great project.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like in a lot of ways my career has come completely full circle, because now I'm back making artwork where I started out as a teenager. And the folks at the Smithsonian, I started working with them a couple of years ago, and this is when they were building the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And I knew that this was something that I wanted to be a part of. And so they approached me about doing a coffee table book about the anthology of hip hop and rap. And I felt like after putting in 30 years of hard work, there was nobody more qualified to design that book than me. So they gave me an opportunity and I jumped on it. And that led to other opportunities, like creating a giant American flag on the National Mall in front of the President of the United States. I get excited just talking about it now, and it was a year ago. But again, it was one of those things that I think had a lot to do with the times that we're living in now, and also this idea that we sort of work really hard to, strive to be better than, who we were when we started. And for me, that's what it's all about, just communicating a very simple idea.
No, absolutely. It's unfortunate that right now, we have, as a society, devolved into something quite ugly. So it's kind of inspiring to say that, you were able to put a design up or a mural up at the National Mall, or to be a part of the, Smithsonian, because as an artist, you have the unique ability to have a life beyond your existence, because these things will be around forever.
Well, that's true.
I mean, as long as the planet is, there is an expiration date on that. We keep messing with, EPA and, environmental, regulations.
But I think that it's an artist's job to communicate that message, and not just to be positive, but to show the world the way it is. And for me, I'm somebody that believes in positivity, so I'm always trying to put positive messages out in the universe. And I think that it's really important for young people to understand who we are and where we come from. So there are some of my pieces that you'll look at and you'll see this story that might be a little grim, but then you'll see other things that are bright and sunny that make you feel really great. And I think that it's a juxtaposition trying to balance those two messages.
So let me go from, I guess, your mural work to more of what you're doing now, even for the museum now. This is called Pop Revolution, and the art form in itself, and the whole collage and the layers. And well, you tell me about it. Let me not step on your toes.
The idea is for Pop Revolution is that I came up in the 80s, and so I admired a lot of the pop artists from the 60s. And so now that I'm getting my opportunity to do exhibitions in major museums, I thought that it was a great time to not only look back on where we came from, but to educate young people about where we're going. And so a lot of the work that I focus on is rooted in American nostalgia. So it's all logo driven, which ties back to my logo work in the early days. And then you have a lot of things that relate to my graphic design work as well. And then the fact that I'm actually making artwork relates back to when I was a graffiti artist. So it incorporates everything that I've experienced in my life. And in addition to that, I'm also an educator now, and I think that it's really important to put positive messages in front of young people and really let them know that there are people that understand where they come from. When I was growing up, I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anybody to show me the way. So for me to be able to sit down and tell teenagers, high school kids, even grade school level, about the history of hip hop as it relates to art and design, to me, it is the easiest thing that I can do, because I think that everybody needs that little bit of help.
So what are you doing with your mentoring right now? What programs are you involved with? Because I know that you were going to the Summit Academy here in the area. So I'm sure you do similar things and closer to home. Yeah,
well, I travel all over the country lecturing and doing workshops. And really, it's preaching the gospel of hip hop more than anything. I talk about art and design in the context of hip hop because that's the time that I came up in. And I want young people to understand that there are people out there that come from the same place that they come from. When I walk into a classroom, I want students to know I do understand who you are and what your circumstances are. And I'm here to be a vehicle to help if there's some way that I can do that.
Or just be inspiring and say, like, if one person can do it, somebody else can do it, right? Because that's really powerful too.
Yeah, and to show, the work that I'm doing and to lead by example. And, I never had aspirations to be an educator or to lecture or to even talk about the work that I'm doing, but I've morphed into a historian because I've been here and I've been on the journey, and I can also speak for a lot of my friends that have done that work as well that are no longer here, like Jean-Michel Basquiat, Keith Haring, Frosty Freeze, Dondi White. I mean, we're at a point now where a lot of these important artists are no longer around, but there's so many of us that are, and I just want to be an example to show young people that you can make it.
No, absolutely. That's really powerful. Now, when we set this up, or what you wanted to do with the Hudson, the HVCCA, tell us about the importance or just the aspect of this being open to the public for people to come and see you do it.
Well, the idea is, it's a little bit like performance art, to be honest.
You're drawing back the curtain, right?
It's a makeshift studio, and I'm here making work that will be in the show, and it's going to be up for 3 months. And so the idea is that it's open to the public. Folks can come in, they can talk to me while I'm working, they can maybe get a little bit of insight into some of the pieces that I'm making that they wouldn't get if they were here and I wasn't here. And
because they can explain what it means.
Yeah, it's just a way of engaging with the community. And to me, that's the best thing about being in a town like this, is that it really reminds me a lot of Mayberry. Everybody's
Peeks
friendly.
reminds you of Mayberry? Oh, you better walk around at night.
Well, everybody's really friendly, and they've been really great to me. And, I come from New York, where it's just a different thing. And I've got nothing but great response from folks here. So I just thought it would be a great idea to open up my studio to people in Peekskill.
Well, definitely thank you for doing that. Why don't we tell our audience about some of the things that you're using? Well, let me ask you this really quickly. Are you concerned that someone's going to copy your style?
No. If anybody wants to spend 36 hours doing this, let them. Not at all. I'm not worried about that one bit. The thing that I've learned about being an artist is that that's never anything that you have to worry about. If somebody is dedicated and passionate, even if they start out doing what you're doing, they will evolve and go in another direction eventually. And that's the beauty of any art form, is that you need to look at people to get some sort of an inspiration, and then you take that in a different direction. So for me, yeah, sure, knock yourself out.
So if we were going to name, one or two people that you can say you were inspired by their style, who would that be?
Well, certainly Ramar Bearden. He was a collage artist that was big in the 60s and 70s, and he was somebody whose work I loved as a kid growing up. Andy Warhol is another one. Again, I just come from that pop sensibility. I like bright colors, bold shapes, and a lot of that is reflected in the work that I do today. And looking back, it was the same thing that I was doing when I was a teenager with graffiti. So I really feel like I've come full circle when I think about the work I'm making now versus what I was doing then.
So what would this piece be called?
I don't know, but it is a mashup of the Goodyear logo and the GE logo. And so right now, I'm just focusing on the Goodyear part. So this is the wing that goes with the Goodyear logo, and then this is the Y, and then this is the rest of the E. So if the logo in front of us, it would extend beyond this wall. And then obviously this is the GE logo on top of that, and so I'm superimposing them on top of each other. And I'm very curious to see what this is going to look like, because the whole thing is paper collage.
It's paper collage. It's on just a regular canvas.
Yeah.
And now you went ahead and put the images down first, or the...
Well, the idea is that I lay the graphic on top so I have a grid to work from. But the thing to me that's really special about this is I have to source content from all over the world. So I go to ephemera and estate sales. This document is from 1907. And
wow,
that's the thing that's so cool about this is that I source materials from all over. And when you look at those
various
things,
magazines and things.
yeah, and I, like I said, I travel all around the country just looking for things to inspire the work that I do. And it's a lot of fun.
So what's like the proprietary part of this? Are you allowed to include this in your work?
Well, it's a collage.
Or are you purchasing it on some level?
No. I mean, well, I find these things wherever I find them. But the reality is I'm taking scraps and I'm turning it into something else. So if somebody that took that photograph looks at that and they have an issue with that, that's one thing. But that piece doesn't make or break the whole painting.
Right.
I could replace that in a second and it wouldn't, take anything away from the work.
So how long does it take you to do something like this?
A piece like this takes about 3 or 4 days, and I usually start at about 9 o'clock in the morning and work until about 7 or 8, depending on how I feel, taking a break for lunch and things like that. But
do you ever get to a point where you say, like, maybe this is not going to work out, you scrap it and start again?
Never start again. I'll walk away for a couple of days, but never start again because I already have a sense of what it's going to look like because I've made so many other pieces. I have a little catalog here, and we could, we'll just do B-roll, for that purpose of that. But
okay.
I've made enough of these pieces to the point now where I know what I'm doing and I know what it's going to look like.
I totally love that because, like you said, you mentioned, I think in your bio or something that I've read, that you like having images that people are familiar with and provide you with some type of comfort or, kind of take you back. They're nostalgic and...
Well, that's the idea, is that I'm using images that are familiar to people, because if you're of a certain age, you definitely remember and you don't need my help. But if you're younger, you might not. And so I think of it as a way of, communicating with the past and the present and bringing something that you might have had a fond memory of as a child into present day. And it's so much fun to watch the reaction of people when they see something in one of my pieces that they didn't, think was going to be there. And then all of a sudden, this sort of warmth rushes over them, and that's the goal.
Because you kind of have to really look at it to pick up some type of little nuance or some little piece of it that you mentioned this was from a certain time period for them to pick up on that. So how many of these pieces are going to be involved in Pop Revolution?
I think we have about maybe 10, maybe 12, something like that. But, I still have to finish this one before, I can tell you. But the idea really is about connecting the past and the present and sort of reminding people about, the golden era of America, when it was a simpler time and people, knew how to get along.
I thought this was the golden era. So where are you now as far as things that you have moving forward? I know that you're going to be here on April 14th. Yeah. And this is going to be here for 3 months. Yeah. So what else do you have planned moving forward?
Wow. I've been working with a lot of the corporations that I've used in the paintings, and so that's been a real blessing. So I have a couple of projects that I'm doing with those guys, but I'm working with the National Museum of African American History and Culture at the Smithsonian quite a bit these days, and so I spend a lot of time bouncing back and forth between.
So what do they have you doing? Because you just did the one mural. So what other projects?
We're also doing this hip hop anthology, and so I'm going to be spending my whole summer putting this anthology together, so it's ready for the holidays, and so that's going to be a treat.
That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So now when they have you go over there, is it just something you're doing on your own, or do they say like go ahead and compose like a little crew or whatever you need to be comfortable?
No, I sort of work as a solo act these days. I did my time managing a huge team of people. Now I'm just managing myself, so
that's a little easier.
Oh yeah.
So the Summit Academy that is here in Peekskill, you were helping them do something over there or kind of working with the students there. Why don't you tell us about that?
Next week we're going to start doing a giant mural as well, and it's going to be comprised of collage materials, and it's going to be a great opportunity for them to engage with me and vice versa, but also a way for them to understand that you can take paper and scraps and you can transform it into something really beautiful. And the thing that's a lot of fun about working with collage is that it sort of breaks down all barriers. When people think that they can't draw or they can't paint, I can just give them a couple of pieces of paper and some glue and just show them how to create something really beautiful.
So I've noticed that collage is not making a comeback because it's always been fairly popular, but I've noticed it in art therapy. I've noticed it being, I guess, taught to young kids in schools and things like that because it is such an easy art form to translate into.
No explanation, and that's how I started doing collage. Is I started teaching small children how to do it, and then I thought, well, let me see what I can do on my own, and I just found that it was the best medium ever because there's no end in terms of like what you can do with it if you're willing to put in the time. And that's the thing that's so much fun about making these pieces is that you don't need a lot of anything. All you need is time and focus. And that's the best thing about working with collage.
Now, the texture part of the collage is really important. So why don't you just speak, a little bit about that, like how you can use a different texture or how you build it?
Well, everything is about layering, and that's the beauty of these pieces is that if you make a mistake or you run into an area where you hit a snag, you just put a piece of paper right on top of it, and you just keep going. And the beauty of layering is that it's never too much or too little, and it's just the perfect vehicle to allow you to have fun. And so, I love it. I absolutely love it.
No, it's definitely something that you can easily get into, and it translates well to most people. They can really absorb it. So I guess if, as an artist, you evolved quite a bit through the years, where do you see yourself maybe in 5 years from now?
Wow, well, if I'm lucky, just being able to put good information in front of young people. Because to me, the education component of my career is where I am now. And so everything I do centers around this idea of putting positive messages in front of young people. That is the thing that I care about more than anything else, because I've been on such a long journey as it relates to doing everything that I had dreamt of doing in my career. And so now I just want to put that information back in front of them.
What's like the most positive image or message you could translate right now?
Well, for me, it's just being a representative of the community of hip hop and just letting young people know that there are people that did this before you that will show you how to get to where you want to go. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying that it's always going to be lucrative, but if you want to learn how it's done, come see somebody like me, and I'll teach you whatever it is I know, because anything that's happened out there, I've experienced in some way, shape, or form, and so have my friends. And I think that is the thing that I have to offer more than anything else, is my knowledge and wisdom about my time in hip-hop.
So what do you, as far as promoting yourself, or maybe you don't even need to promote yourself, people are seeking you out to do lectures and things like that. How do they go about contacting you to make all that happen?
Well, they can certainly go to my website, ceyadams.com, and they can find me there. I mean, I'm not difficult to find, at least I don't think so.
So you deal with everybody directly, you don't have any representation
or
anything?
Well, I do, but I encourage people to reach out to me as well, because I don't want anybody deciding what's good for me. And I love talking to people about my work and the history and their work. And like I said, I really just want to be a vehicle for people to realize their own dreams. And I know that sounds a little, like airy, but the reality is...
No, it's not. It's not.
It is true.
It's something cool to say and cool to appreciate, and that you want to put that message out there because, like you said, there's so many ways that you can take a wrong turn in one's life, And
this is a difficult time for young people, and that's something that I recognize, more than ever. I mean, when I was coming up, I thought it was tough, but man, it's really rough being a young person today. And they have so many things coming at them and so many distractions when it, comes to things like technology. And, for us, everything was organic. We had to make everything that we wanted. And there was no opportunity. There was nobody looking to say, hey, we want to know what you young people think. People weren't checking for us like that. So we had to scream and shout to have our voice heard. Now, young people have opportunities, up the wazoo, and
I would
everybody
think there'd be
wants
less
to know.
opportunity in
No,
some
there's
ways.
more.
Because
everybody wants to know what young people think. Marketers, merchandisers, big corporations. Like, think about it. Everybody wants to tap into young energy.
But that whole, there's not going to be another movement or something similar to that anytime soon.
No,
right? That was a
happen.
moment in time.
That won't happen.
So,
but the idea that people care about what you think is important. When I was coming up, nobody asked me what I wanted to see on a T-shirt or what I wanted to see on the side of my sneakers. They just put it in front of you.
Right.
Now, young people, their voice matters in that way. You can design your own clothes online right now.
Right, it's a more sophisticated form of consumerism.
Yeah. I mean, it
Right.
is, but still, you have the freedom to make your own decisions. And that's really important. And that's the difference between where we are today and where I come from. And to me, that's exciting because, I could, find ways to use that technology right now.
If you had that back in the day, who knows?
Yeah, but I was fortunate. I got to work with a lot of the big brands when I was really young because I understood the community that I came from, and folks like Adidas and Nike gave me that opportunity. So
You were their voice. So I just want to thank you for giving us, this opportunity to see you in the midst of your work, to kind of come to your makeshift studio here. Thank you for the positive message, and thank you for sharing your time with us, which I know you don't probably have a whole lot of. So I really appreciate that. And just want to go ahead and tell our audience about the dates and the times of your exhibit here.
Wow.
Okay, so Pop Revolution, we know it's Pop Revolution, is at the HBCCA, and you can go to their website to find out more information about it. So Cey, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's a lot of fun.
I'm glad we had this time. To the Living Arts audience, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this segment of our broadcast here, and we will talk to you soon. Peace.